Happy Saturday evening. So I wanted to talk about, I guess, it's kind of a weird topic for me. It's the intent of a composer or composer's intent. So came about actually due to a couple of conversations I had with I would say my best friend, who is actually a great musician, and he is conservatory trained. I'm not. I am like a hobbyist. I obviously love guitar and make these videos. And so we got to talking about composer's intent. So whenever I talk to a lot of classical people, and specifically sometimes jazz people, and we'll talk about that, they talk about if you play a piece of music and they say, well, that wasn't the intent of the composer. That wasn't the intent of the composer. And that phrase has always, bothered me, irked me, or confused me. I never understood what people meant by that. Yes, I understand that if a piece of music is written, there are certain notations to say played louder, played slower, played faster, dynamics, and things of that nature. But intent is something that is very, 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 very hard to get at. And when people say to play something in accordance with the composer's intent, it just always confuses me. I don't know, maybe it's from my legal training. And when I think of intent, I think of really the Constitution of the United States. And I think of like, say, originalist theory. When people talk about that within the confines of the Constitution, it is that the judiciary should interpret the Constitution and all of the amendments in accordance with the way the framers intended that to be interpreted, which I always thought, I don't want to get all into a legalese, was asinine. It's very, very hard to get into the framer's state of mind. The same way it's very difficult for me to think that it is, the same way it's difficult to get into the composer's frame of mind. So if you think about whether it's classical music, Bach's Jesus of Man's Desiring, like, what was the intent? What were they feeling? You can extrapolate things based upon the historical context, what was going on. Was there a war? Was there a famine? Was there a lot of great things happening and they were conquering things? You can interpret that and you can put that feeling to that. But that is not necessarily somebody's intent from that perspective. A lot of times, even as guitarists, when we talk about intent, whether it's classical, whether it's jazz, whether it's rock, let's say classical, for example. I think it's very difficult as a classical guitarist to be talking about composer's original intent or the composer's intent when most of the pieces that they're playing weren't even written for a guitar, but they were written for a keyboard or some other classical instrument. And so that whole notion is very, very foreign to me. The other thing, too, is that intent changes. For example, the way you play a song, even if it's your own piece of music, changes, for me, especially within the jazz idiom, depending upon authenticity, the way you're feeling, and things of that nature. So I argue that it's very, very difficult to play in accordance with a composer's intent. If you think about, and I think that it's regardless of the genre. So let's talk about, say, Jimi Hendrix. When Jimi Hendrix played the Star Spangled Banner at Woodstock, what was the intent of that? That wasn't written for that. And a lot of people didn't even like that, the way it was done. It was like distortion and things of that nature. So clearly, that was not the intent. If you kind of think about it, whoever wrote it, I think it was F. Scott Fitzgerald, the Star Spangled Banner, didn't write it for feedback and a Marshall stack to come through. It is beautiful. So I don't think you can get into that whole intent argument. And at the end of the day, that's one example Jimmy's playing. I would say even when you're playing jazz music, and if you're playing So What by Miles Davis, it's what are you feeling at that point in time? If you listen to the bass line in So What, the original bass line, it's prominent, but it's really not that prominent. But everybody else who re-records that song, it's like da 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 da. It's not that prominent. So people played fast, people played slow. What was Miles' intent? I can't get into Miles' head. And intent is not getting into somebody's head per se, or as they would say in law, mens rea. It is, you can extrapolate from things. So anyway, sorry for this long-winded discussion. I think that the whole notion of composer's intent is very challenging. It is not so much that it's hokey. It's just that I grapple with it, and be curious to get people's feedback just in terms about when they talk about composer's intent, what they mean, and what their understanding is of that. So, all right then. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great weekend. Bye now.